Welcome to the Herald Democrat Sports Podcast. I am Jason Della Rosa, the sports editor here at the Herald Democrat, and we are about to enter week 2 of the high school football season. Everyone had their season openers last week, and we're getting into the heart of non-district play, and for some people, it's the last game of district play. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go game by game to get ready for this weekend's action. We'll do a little recap on last week, and then we'll touch on who the opponent is this Friday. Of course, the best place to start after week 1 is the Battle of the Axe. Denison came away with a 29-13 victory against Sherman. It was Denison's 7th straight victory in the rivalry, and that is a record for the Yellow Jacket side. And this week, they are going to be taking on Burleson Centennial at Munson Stadium. Both teams are 1-0. Last year's game was close. Burleson Centennial won 52-49 in a shootout, and there's a good chance that we'll see some of the same offensive outbursts this year because a lot of the same skill position players are back. Last week against Sherman, Denison had 3 players rush for more than 100 yards. Jadarian Price had 18 carries for 111 yards and a touchdown. Quarterback Zaylin Wimbish had 25 carries for 152 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Asa Osborne had 21 carries for 116 yards and a score as well. Price did not play for most of the second half. He received the opening kickoff in the third quarter and had the first carry for the Jackets, but then did not return due to an ankle injury. He is a game-time decision. It will be interesting to see what happens with that because the Jackets open district play next week. Obviously, those games are more important than this week, so he may either be limited or may not play at all depending on his recovery throughout the week. The Bearcats will go on the road and they will take on Fort Worth Brewer on Friday night. This was another game that was close last year. Brewer rallied in the final minutes and they won 24-21. So Sherman will be trying to avoid the 0-2 start. Brewer is also 0-1 after they opened with a 45-26 loss to VR Eaton. In the Battle of the Axe, Tate Bethel got the start at quarterback. That was something to watch for that we talked about in previewing that game, and acclimated very well. He completed 16 of 28 passes for 209 yards and a touchdown. Did not have a turnover, showed an ability to scramble, make some things happen throughout that. So the passing game was effective. The running game against the Jackets was not. Sherman only ran 28 times for 63 yards. Mike Brown had 16 of those carries for 44 yards and a touchdown. It was very inconsistent, and Sherman was unable to kind of establish things on the ground, made the game a little more one-dimensional, and Denison was able to take advantage of that and get the win there. The next game is Whitesboro and Aubrey, and that game's going to be on Whitesboro's brand new turf that was installed over the summer. This is their first opportunity to play on that. Whitesboro is 1-0. They opened the season with a 20-7 victory against Anna, and Aubrey is 0-1. They lost 34-24 to Van Alstyne. Last year in this matchup, Whitesboro won 37-0. So after last week, new head coach Cody Fagan, he won his debut for the Bearcats. He's off to a good start there. And the defense, like we said, they only allowed 7 points. They forced 4 turnovers, and so that kind of carried the way there. Cade Acker was the quarterback. That was another situation where there was a potential quarterback battle going into the season, and the senior won the job. Did a good job with that. He threw 2 touchdown passes and also ran 19 times for 124 yards. So he was a dual threat in that game against Anna. And Aubrey, their defense gave up a lot of big plays against Van Alstyne. They allowed 3 touchdowns from the other side of the field, and that's something to watch this week as well. So Aubrey's going to try to get their defense going, try to slow down Whitesboro a little bit. The next game is going to be Pottsboro at Gunner. This is a matchup of 2 teams that traditionally have a lot of success. Gunner has won 35 straight regular season games. Pottsboro is trying to reach the playoffs for the 10th straight year. Of course, this is a non-district game, and last year and the year before, Gunner has won via shutout, and last year's margin was 27-0, so Pottsboro will be trying to break through against the Tigers in Tiger Stadium. The Pottsboro offense is led by Braden Plyler. He has been injured the last 2 years early in the season and missed time, and the junior bounced back in a big way, showing what he can do when he's healthy. He had 3 touchdown passes last week in a 38-8 victory over North Lamar. 2 of those throws were to Titus Lyons, and he completed 16 of 19 attempts for 215 yards. So that shows what he can do when he's able to get on the field. And Cy Shope took over the main running back duties. He had 11 carries for 86 yards and 3 touchdowns to account for all of the Cardinals' scoring. Gunner went on the road against Dangerfield, and that was a matchup of two of the top 10 ranked teams in 3A Division II, and were able to pull out a 22-21 victory. The Tigers were down 21-0 after the first quarter, and they chipped away. Bryson Rigsby had 2 touchdown runs, and Peyton Lowe scored with a couple minutes left, and then caught the 2-point conversion pass that proved to be the difference from Hudson Graham. And the Tiger defense really stepped up the second half shutout and allowed Gunner to come back, keep that regular season win streak alive. So that should be a good matchup. Both teams are obviously 1-0, and Pottsboro is trying to be 2-0 for the first time since 2015. Gunner has been the team each year since then to keep them from getting to 2-0. So the Cardinals will be trying to get over that hump. The next game is SNS at Howe, and that is a game where someone will get their first win of the season after both teams opened with losses last week. SNS lost to Paradise 55-26, and Howe lost against Ponder 35-21. Both teams showing they can do some things offensively. The defenses were part of the issue last week. Howe won this game last year 41-20, and as part of them actually opening the season 3-0 last year before ending the season on a 7-game win streak. So Howe is looking to break an 8-game losing streak going back to last year. The Rams are trying to break a 12-game losing streak dating back to the 2017 season. So somebody's going to be very happy at Bulldog Stadium after Friday night. The SNS offense, like we mentioned, they scored 26 points. That is better than all but one game from last year when injuries really hurt their personnel. And Jake Reynolds was back at quarterback. He ran for a touchdown and also had 2 touchdown passes to Ace Mabry. And Joey Baggs paced the running game with 18 carries for 126 yards. They produced over 300 yards of offense. And Howe, in the loss to Ponder, started a freshman quarterback and to go with some upperclassmen at running back. Caden Harmon and was in the backfield in that regard, and Stephen Waldrop had a couple of touchdown receptions. They're a lot more open in terms of the offense. It's not just a run-first offense, so that would be something to watch for in the game between SNS and Howe on Friday. The next game on the list is Van Alstyne at Sunnyvale. This is a game that has taken place the last 6 years. The first 3 years were playoff matchups, and this is the third straight where it has not been in the playoffs. And both teams are 1-0. Van Alstyne won last week, like we mentioned, 34-24 against Aubrey, while Sunnyvale beat Kemp 50-0. The Raiders have won 11 straight regular season games, so they've been a tough out. They have won all 6 of the meetings against Van Alstyne, so the Panthers are trying to get off the schneid there. And they had a quarterback battle going into the season as well. Timothy Rosenthal, the transfer from TCS, won that job, and he made some big plays in the win last week. He had a 52-yard touchdown pass to Cam Montgomery. He had a 59-yard touchdown pass to Draylon Davis, And senior Jake Carroll, who became the starter running back last year, ran 14 times for 194 yards and 2 touchdowns. One of those was a 65-yard run. So the big plays really carried the Panthers. They scored in every quarter and were able to kind of break things open against Aubrey. It will be a little tougher against Sunnyvale. Trip McAda is the quarterback for Sunnyvale. They, like I said, they put it on Kent pretty good last week, and last year this matchup they won. The Raiders won 38-15. So should be interesting to see if Van Alstyne can go on the road against an opponent that they've had trouble with and be able to pull out the victory. Moving along to Whitewright at Honeygrove. This is a matchup of two teams that are 1-0. Whitewright opened its season in the Kevin Wiggins era at Whitewright with a 21-20 victory against Clarksville, and Honeygrove was able to break a tie in the fourth quarter for a 38-30 victory against Bells. Now, last year Honeygrove won this game 32-6, but Whitewright obviously showed they can bounce back. Last year they lost pretty badly to Clarksville, and this year they were able to pull out that victory. That came on a touchdown pass in the final minute from Marshall Mangrum to Kylan Watson, and the extra point was the difference, and so they were able to hang on there. Aaron Pitt came up with an interception in the end zone as time expired to preserve that victory for the Tigers. Meanwhile, Honeygrove had a strong ground game like they usually do. Trell Pruitt led the way for the Warriors. It was a back-and-forth game against Bells. It was tied at 30 late in the middle of the fourth quarter, and they were able to pull that out. So that will be an interesting matchup. If Whitewright is able to kind of control the Warriors on the ground, that's a good that'll be a good way for them to get the win. So we'll see what happens there. Bells, speaking of Bells, they go on the road to Wolf City, and then that is a matchup of 0-1 squads. Like we mentioned, Bells lost to Honeygrove by 8, and Wolf City lost in double overtime 28-26 against Leonard. So both teams had opportunities to win their openers, were unable to. Last year's matchup, Wolf City came away with a 30-14 victory, and they are the Wolves are run-based, probably more so than Honeygrove, so Bells will get a dose of that. Dylan Wilson is the leading rusher for Wolf City. He was last year, and he is again this year as a senior. So the Panther defense will have to try to corral him, and the Panthers are looking to avoid an 0-2 start for the first time in 7 years. So they haven't been in this position for a very long time. They're going to try to avoid doing that. Wolf City was stopped on a 2-point conversion to avoid having that game against Leonard go to triple overtime. So they had chances in that game. And for Bells, they are switching from a spread attack to the slot T under new head coach Dale West. And they had 3 players with double-digit carries. Condor Morris had 10 carries for, let me see if I can find that here. Condor Morris had 10 carries for 83 yards. Bo Baker had 16 carries for 82 yards. And Wrangler Priest had 20 carries for 76 yards. And Blake Rowland, the quarterback, almost got there as well. He had 8 carries in that game too. So a lot of run in that game. Morris had a touchdown run. Priest had 2, and then also returned a fumble 50 yards for a score to account for the scoring for the Panthers. Collinsville and Bowles will play in Collinsville. Those are 2 0-1 teams. Bowles lost 51-26 against Scurry Rosser, and Collinsville lost a defensive struggle 8-6 against Sacred Heart out of Munster. So these teams were supposed to play last year, and they did not because of storms that canceled the game. So these teams haven't played since 2011, and that was a playoff game that Collinsville won 46-0. And in the 5 previous meetings, Collinsville has won 4 of them. This will be the second game for the Pirates under new head coach Garrett Patterson. Last week, Trey Shelby led the team in rushing with 60 yards. And basically, the Collinsville's trying to build on, basically a poor offensive game last week. You only scored 6 points. There's really nowhere to go but up. Bowles also has a new head coach this season, so they may be trying to work some things out as well after losing their opener against Scurry Rosser. Another matchup of 0-1 teams after the first week is Tom Bean visiting Prairieland. Prairieland lost 35-0 to DeKalb, and Tom Bean lost 7-6 against Tioga. This was a matchup last year that Tom Bean was able to win 30-20, and they're going to try to get in the win column to avoid an 0-2 start for the third time in the last 4 years. Last week in the loss to Tioga, Tom Bean tied the game with Lance Pauler's 16-yard run in the middle of the fourth, about 6.5 minutes left, but went for two and was unable to take the lead, and that was the game. Tioga's only score came in the first quarter. It was late in the first quarter, and they didn't do anything else. Tom Bean did force 5 turnovers. They just couldn't get anything in going offensively, despite the fact that Caleb Graham did run for 149 yards on 28 carries. Tom Bean had 2 turnovers as well. Couldn't really move the ball through the air. That kind of kept things from moving along. And Prairieland, like I said, they were shut out last week, so they really have nowhere to go but up. That's a team that's finished 1-9 each of the last 2 seasons. So they're trying to get kind of things going in the right direction over in Pattonville. And the last game this week is Blue Ridge at Tioga. Like we just mentioned, Tioga's coming off the 7-6 victory over Tom Bean, and Blue Ridge lost 46-13 against City View. Tioga's defense, obviously, they had a shutout for 3.5 quarters against Tom Bean. They forced 2 turnovers. They held the Tomcats to a little over 200 yards. So the defense did the job there. The offense really struggled. Ryan Montgomery's 15-yard touchdown run, with 3 minutes to go in the first quarter, was the only scoring by the Bulldogs, and luckily for them, that was enough for them to get in the win column. That actually matches their win total from last season when they went 1-10. And for those who happen to catch the preview edition last week, the district that Tioga is in, District 9 2A Division 2, only has 4 teams in it. So the Bulldogs have already clinched their playoff spot. Once they get into district play with Munster, Era, and Cumbie, they're just fighting for seeding. So the fact that Tioga was already able to match their win total from last year, obviously a much more positive start. They did have the 5 turnovers, 4 of them were interceptions, and they only had 89 yards of offense. But they were able to get the win. So some positives there, also some things to work on. So we'll see how they do against the Blue Ridge team that was unable to get the win last week. Blue Ridge had only 125 yards of offense against City View. Garrett Mathers is probably their main focal point on offense as a running back. He also is a starter at linebacker, so that's something to watch. And to touch back on last week, on the conversion that the Bulldogs stopped to win that game, Caleb Scott was the one who made the saving tackle to keep the Bulldogs in the lead and give them the first win. Last year's game in this matchup, Blue Ridge did win 38-0, so that will be something that will be interesting to see. Of course, Blue Ridge does have a new coach. Kevin Wiggins went to Whitewright to leave an opening there, so they may be learning a new system and trying to get some things figured out, as evidenced by their score from the opening week. So that is what to watch for in week 2, as well of a little recap from week 1. As always, you can follow me on Twitter. That's at Jason Della Rosa. It's 2 L's in Della, and it's all one word. And also, you can go to heralddemocrat.com to check out all the coverage that we have high school-wise, and to listen to this podcast and future podcasts. And also on Facebook, you can find a lot of the articles involving football, volleyball, anything with the local high school sports scene at the All Texoma Land Facebook page. Those are 3 places that you can find lots of content, whether it's a podcast, a story, just updates, stats, whatever you're looking for. Hopefully, we're going to be able to provide it for you there. So I thank you for listening to this week's podcast, and look forward for you to check in the future.